It is not power that corrupts, but fear. Fear of losing power corrupts those who wield it, and fear of the scourge of power corrupts those who are subject to it. Good evening and welcome. This is Face the Nation. Our topic of discussion today revolves around politics as well as the country's economy. It is politics and the economic future of Sri Lanka. To discuss all this and more, we have a well-celebrated parliamentarian. He is a politician. He is none other than leader of the Mahajana Eksat Peramuna, Mr. Dinesh Gunawardena. A very good evening and welcome to the show, Mr. Gunawardena.
Good evening.
Let's start off talking about the current political climate in the eyes of the Mahajana Eksat Peramuna at this point of time. How do you view the current political climate in Sri Lanka?
Thank you. Mahajana Eksat Peramuna is also a member of the joint alliance of the opposition parties. And Mahajana Eksat Peramuna of its own has had very clear positions in relation to the unitary state, the unity of Sri Lanka, and the democratic process in our country, for which we have continuously fought, as well as for economic development in a mixed economy where Sri Lanka could progress. But with the changes taking place world over, we have been now plunged into an economic situation where the present government, since assuming office, expected investment to flow overnight and boost the economy in the way they perhaps were dreaming of. But it has not happened. Why I say it has not happened? The rupee has been depreciating at a rate that is faster than any other period. Secondly, the foreign exchange that was being expected as FDIs, much more is flowing out of the country than what is coming in, which shows that there is no confidence in Sri Lanka's economy, except the Sri Lankan entrepreneurs who are faced with various new laws, regulations, and new taxes, freezing of the bank rates. Thereby again the economy is on a path of very slow growth. We have had fast growth, now it's very slow growth, which is a drop or a collapse of the economy.
Mr. Gunawardena, you speak of the current economy of Sri Lanka. Let me drag a little bit to the current political climate in the country. What is your take on that?
After 2.5 years, President Sirisena and Prime Minister Wickremesinghe had to virtually ask the finance minister to go. I mean, in diplomatic terms, he was asked to go. Why? The JO in opposition did lead a campaign of severe exposure of the finance ministry and its shortcomings, the budget shortcomings, etc., etc. This has led, the last political crisis which led to the transfer of ministers, transfer of the foreign minister as the finance minister, unprecedented with a finance minister having the portfolio of media. I don't think in anywhere in the world. Foreign minister having lottery, nowhere in the world. Government is shuffling deputies, shuffling key chairman of institutions, thinking economy will revive by that. This is the political crisis they are in on the eve of the end of the 2-year political agreement with the UNP and the SLP.
Minister Gunawardena, when you say that, let's talk about the economic aspect that you first brought up. You said that the rupee is depreciating and there is no confidence on the country's economy. However, the allegation leveled by the government is the fact that we are in this situation because of the previous regime led by Mahinda Rajapaksa. What is your thought on that?
Well, of course, every government in the world, when they are elected, whether in Asia or the Western world, would blame to some degree the previous government. But let us take Mahinda Rajapaksa government did borrow, okay, yes, but we invested in infrastructure, which was unprecedented. We pumped in the largest amount of investment for rehabilitation in the north, unprecedented. Of course, we had to borrow because Sri Lanka had by that time moved up to a middle income country where you have to borrow on various commercial terms.
Now the government is saying because of the borrowings that have been made by the previous regime, now they have to pay. Henceforth, they have to remove the cap on the currency. They have to ensure that they pay these loans back. So it seems like a very justifiable answer, isn't it?
Right. The whole problem is when they came in, they had enough reserves. What has happened to the reserves? They are spending on the reserves expecting an inflow to come. This is the biggest crisis. Then they had to get India to park in certain amount of foreign exchange for temporary. All these moves have not finally paid off. They expected to first punish, I would use the word punish, China for investing in Sri Lanka, Colombo port development, Hambantota, and for 10 months it was suspended. Then they went back to China and they're trying to negotiate agreements for a 99-year period, virtual sell-off for 3 generations. This is the crisis they are in, and this is reflected in the political crisis, not only in the cabinet transfers. The government has not had local government elections for 2 years. 15 million voters waiting to elect their local government reps, whether government or opposition or from north. It is the local government, the grassroots democracy that we've been deprived, which is a glaring example that the government is frightened of the people. They can't go to the people. This is the political crisis they are in.
Mr. Gunawardena, interestingly, you also mentioned about the cabinet reshuffle that took place recently, and then you said that you've never seen something of this sort happening with other countries, other nations. Mr. Gunawardena, you are quite well aware, we had approximately 100 ministries under the previous regime. We had ministries for coconut development, then we had ministries for wildlife and agrarian services. We had ministries that were broken into pieces. And you are sitting here today and saying or justifying that was right and this is wrong, or saying both these aspects were wrong. Both these
I would take the stand. I agree with you. I would take the stand. The people gave a mandate to the president as the prime minister to limit it to 30. Where has this gone? Where has this promise gone? It's over. So in short, they have fooled the country.
No, but it says
we never said we would go down to 25. I don't agree with the increase in the number of portfolios or splitting when we have already 50 ministers of the provincial councils. We have 50 already there, and in addition, if we go to increase the ministries, we stand for a proposal where executive committees should come into working in parliament, where all members would participate in government. This is the biggest mistake in our country. Every government forgets the views of the opposition in formulating national policies, and as a result we go from one crisis to another. And we know Honorable Gamini Disnayaka's period, President Jayawardena, he reduced the Mahavali project to a 6-year period from 30. delivered, was criticized. Why did you borrow? Why are you borrowing? Why are you doing this? All that criticism was there. Even now we are paying for that. But didn't it pay off? It paid off. Of the power crisis, irrigation, etc. Similarly, Hambantota will pay off. Mattala has already proved to be a success story. When we had to close down Katunayaka for the repairs, we had Mattala. If we did not have Mattala, we would have had to go to Chennai. I mean, this is how I remember being a parliamentarian for 30 years. Parliament has been discussing this for the second airport for 30 years.
Mr. Gunawardena, when you speak of the incidents of what happened in the past, and then when you're talking about national policy, I'm trying to identify what you're trying to say, because I remember there was a report that you've compiled, Dinesh Gunawardena Committee report on electoral reform, interim report, this was submitted to the select committee. Never was it implemented. It was not even done during the Mahinda Rajapaksa time. And here you are sitting here today and trying to say we never had a policy. And this should be attributed to what happened in the past as well, isn't it?
Let me correct you on that. It was Mahinda Rajapaksa's government which accepted the principle of what we had recommended and brought the mixed electoral system for local government. We passed the legislation in Parliament. It was unanimous. I was there when it was passed. It was unanimous. But after that, it had not been implemented by the new government. If you pass a legislation unanimously, why can't you implement? After all, I mean, as far as we are concerned, we know Colombo has been won by the UNP ever since after Dr. N.M. Pereira being mayor. Right through, the UNP has won. Why isn't the UNP holding elections for the Colombo Municipal Council or to the local authorities in the country? Today, you would agree with me, these was the recommendations. The mixed system to come. The first past the post and a percentage of the PR. Because today PR has corrupted the members. They cannot survive under the PR system. It is an immense expenditure for a candidate.
Mr. Gunawardena, you said that when a particular law has been passed in the Parliament, why cannot the present government go on with it? You would agree when I say that there were many legislations that were passed in Parliament, in particular the 18th Amendment of the Constitution, which was not healthy. You said yes for this in the vote, and then you said no to it as well when it was taken up for a vote again, the 19th Amendment of the Constitution. You voted in favor. I'm trying to really figure out what the stand of your political party and your stand as the leader of the MEP is when it comes to legislation. Can you really expect that sort of legislation to be adhered by the public of this nation? Is that right?
No, I agree. I mean, there is an argument in what you say, but let us see what were the reasons that 18th Amendment was brought to a certain degree. We were in a war situation. We had to strengthen the presidency till the situation changes, and that's why as a general and the presidential we propose that we go to Parliament to adopt a new constitution. Now, can we knock off the presidency in the time of the final battlefield and discuss constitution with the opposition which doesn't agree? They didn't even agree that we were advancing to elephant.
The 18th Amendment of the Constitution was not brought forward in the year 2009 when we were fighting a war in Sri Lanka.
No,
it was brought much more later. We were not fighting a war at that time.
Yes, we had to bring certain stability for a few years, because soon after the war there has to be rehabilitation, and we were facing the human rights issue by the Western countries, ignoring the victories that we had brought, but we were ready to accept the general public mandate that there should be changes in the constitution, and democratically the opposition voted with amendments, not just for all, with amendments to the 19th Amendment, to see whether this will bring a smooth functioning of democracy. And it has failed. It has failed today. Sorry to say, it has failed.
Mr. Gunawarthana, we of course will delve deeper into the points that you raised, but before I move, open the floor for questions from our journalists, one more question to you. This year was not a good year for you. We saw your suspension in Parliament, and your father is an individual who formed the MEP, Mr. Philip Gunawarthana, late Mr. Philip Gunawarthana, who is a well-celebrated individual. And the people thought that this is not the behavior we expect from someone like Mr. Dinesh Gunawarthana, who has a lot of integrity, who is a straightforward man, and who has a lot of discipline. And when this happened in Parliament and your suspension came into play, people were thinking, have we really appointed the right people to Parliament? What do you have to say to them? We have a lot of Colombo-based viewers who are watching this show tonight, probably your voters as well. Yes. What do you have to tell them?
I believe so. My voters, I have kept the trust. I have not disrupted Parliament. I canvassed an issue which is a realistic issue, which the Speaker has overruled. 52 members under my leadership in Parliament, the JO is not recognized, not given time, not duly recognized. That is what we were canvassing, and we were forced to keep our arguments down, and the Speaker was having his ruling and expecting us this to say yes, and so that the JO 52 would be, if you take arithmetic equation, 16 gets the leader of the oppositionship, 52 doesn't even get the right to speak. How can one keep silent? One argues these points, maybe debates it in Parliament. It's not only myself. Let us go back. Leader of the opposition, Dr. N.M. Pereira and his party was carried away from Parliament. The present generation does not know this. They defied the Speaker. They were all carried away from Parliament. Professor Sundarlingam carried away from Parliament. That is the background of parliamentary democracy in our country. So it is a matter, I was not trying to be rude to the Speaker, I was arguing my point on behalf of my 52 members. The right has to be recognized. We are 52. Whether the Prime Minister wants his leader of the opposition or the President wants his leader of the opposition, we are much more than they. We are double their numbers.
Mr. Gunawarthana, you say that you have 52 members and you have the backing of 52 members in Parliament. However, when Lakshman Kiriyala tabled the motion to have you suspended in Parliament, only 22 turned up. Were you not disappointed if that's the case?
Well, no,
where is the majority that you're showing in Parliament saying we have 52, only 22 turned up?
No,
not even former President Mahinda Rajapaksa was present in Parliament.
Of course, Mahinda Rajapaksa was in some public meeting far away.
Again,
we
have our public meetings,
but all do not attend Parliament. The government also could not muster with the TNA support the 151 if we take that equation. MPs don't attend Parliament every day because, sad to say, as a senior member, very little interest shown to Parliament. There is nothing much seriously being debated in Parliament, seriously being taken in Parliament. I have to say this, I have openly told the Speaker in Parliament, to the Prime Minister, parliamentary debates are going down, parliamentary activity is going down. So you don't get everyone present to vote unless it's a key vote. Given time, everyone comes.
Leave alone the goodwill of the people. They even didn't turn up to protect their fellow colleague in Parliament. Mr. Gunawarthana.
And I can interpret it anyway. If we read the old Hansard's similar situation when leader of the opposition N.M. Pereira was carried away. He didn't get all the numbers. So, I mean, these are arguments of numbers. I agree with you, people should attend Parliament.
They should attend Parliament, and they should stand on behalf of the public, because at the end of the day, it's a public who have voted in a majority of these parliamentarians, and even the national list is something that is being brought forward to ensure that the right people, the right candidates are chosen to the legislature of this resplendent nation. Let me open the floor for questions from our journalists. On to my immediate right today is the very bright Faraz Shaukat Ali. Nice to have you on board, Faraz, as always.
Thank you, Shamir.
On to my immediate left is Attorney at Law Sonali Vanikapaduge. Nice to have you as well, Sonali. And on to my far left is Chaturanga Aparach. Let's start off tonight's show with Faraz.
Thank you, Shamir. Hello, Mr. Gunawardena. 2.5 years is rather long time, as you said. But your opposition is also in disarray. You've got 2.5 years, and you've only got, if you say it's so bad, as you say, then how come your opposition is so very limited?
No, opposition has been successful in trying to checkmate the certain key wrongs of the government. Take the key issue, the central bank bond or the central bank robbery. If not for the opposition, it would have been put under the carpet.
I might have to disagree with you. I think that it is because of the media that it has been kept up there.
Yeah, media had to keep up when we raised it. Media did not raise at the beginning. It was the small opposition JO members who took up and challenged, and we were on the street demanding the removal of the governor. Who else was on the street demanding the removal of the governor? The president had to bring in a new governor, and they finally appoint a commission. Everything and everyone in the government was trying to block it.
I don't want to put too much of a finer point, but on the first weekend of the of a particular network, our network actually, we asked for the removal of the governor of the central bank on a matter of conflict of interest. But that's not really the point here. The point is that you've got 2.5 years, and you haven't. The opposition is appears to be in disarray. And isn't it true that if you, how did you enter Parliament this time round, and all you 52?
No, the opposition, there is only one opposition today. That is only the JO. The TNA is part of the government, and the JVP also has not.
But you all were elected not as a separate party as the JO, were you?
No, we were campaigning soon after defeat of Mahinda Rajapaksa. 19th of May, we launched the first meeting in Nugegoda. Myself and our fellow members, Vasudevana Nakar, Mal Veeravansa and Kamampila. We launched the first massive rally to bring back and to checkmate the government's actions against the people and the country. Not just opposing everything. And this...
But you all didn't come as a separate party, that's my point.
Agree for us. We carried on with this campaign, which brought the SLP to its knees, those who went on to the government. They were on their knees for the general election. They came to Mahinda Rajapaksa, asked him to lead the people once again, because he had the block vote, which we had re-canvassed and reorganized in the first 4 months.
It sounds to me as though you all were trying to get in through the back door, because you were not elected as a separate 52 block party, 52 member party. You campaigned from a different party. So shouldn't you actually resign and then come back? Isn't that how it should work?
Really speaking, those who go against the mandate should resign. The mandate was Mahinda Rajapaksa to be elected as the Prime Minister under the UPFA against the UNP. This is how we canvassed the votes. So people who did not want the UNP voted for us. And had we had the majority, Mahinda Rajapaksa could have been the Prime Minister.
But you all did not get the majority in parliament elections.
Even Prime Minister Wickremesinghe didn't get the majority. I mean, it is a matter of how one would see the situation. That is okay. We have not got the majority, but we had no mandate to join or go under the UNP leadership. We sat in opposition. But those who have gone against the mandate has crossed the lines and gone under the UNP leadership. That is the error. People should respect the mandate given to them to form or to work against the UNP and form a government. But here some of them go under the UNP Prime Minister and accepts office. This is what has happened. I mean, our 52 has stood by the people, and for the last 2.5 years we have been organizing amidst all the pressure that has been brought. We have been deprived heavily our MPs of public work in their constituencies.
But you all agreed to campaign recognizing Maithripala Sirisena as the leader. Now that the results all out, isn't it time that you all extended the fullest support to him, and perhaps then you could have had the UNP as the common enemy? But now you've split, and then you're saying, well, look, you know, we were elected there, but now we want to sit on our own, and we want to be the recognized opposition. Doesn't quite work like that, does it?
Far as the majority of the MPs did not agree with President Sirisena to form a government with the UNP. Majority of our MPs. That is the democratic verdict of our MPs, because their mandate did not agree to go under the UNP. I mean, not only just because it's UNP, because the UNP represents certain policies with which we cannot agree. So whether President is in office or not, it is very difficult for us to accept the UNP leadership. This is the crux of the issue, is political principles. I mean, we have to have political principles. UNP is a minority government. We also do not have the majority. Half of our people, less than half, has crossed over for office. I mean, nothing but holding office. And they would realize that what they are doing is wrong. Initially also, on the 9th of January, some of them went and accepted office. But they halfway, some of them resigned, came back to the opposition fold.
This is something that we saw very heavily being carried out during the President Mahinda Rajapaksa time. We saw people being bought over. We saw what happened at the 18th Amendment of the Constitution. Mr. Gunawardhan, you are quite well aware. President Mahinda Rajapaksa at that time did not have a majority, a two-thirds majority in Parliament. There were many crossovers that took place, and that is how the two-thirds majority was created. And just a few days after, you had the 18th Amendment of the Constitution being tabled in Parliament. So this is something that has followed through. It's a precedent that has been set across in the Sri Lankan Parliament.
Yeah, it has gone for some time. During Mahinda Rajapaksa's regime, then perhaps the numbers were very much bigger. But it has happened from the days of President Jayawardena, President Premadasa, people crossing and joining the government after contesting from a different party. The numbers were very high, especially when Honorable Karu Jayasuriya led the team from the UNP to join Mahinda Rajapaksa.
He said,
the deputy leader of the UNP, said, I want to support to win the war. And he was there with his team accepting office in order to support the war.
Karu Jayasuriya also stepped away from the UPFA at that time and joined the United National Party, stating that he cannot fulfill his task towards the country. He was the Minister of Public Administration. What happened then? There was interference by the previous regime?
He left after our victory, or after the eve of the victory.
Well, that's not the reason that he left the party.
He had disagreements and he left, but most of his ministers did remain. Let us see. I mean, that is the reality. All these governments have seen, even Madam Chandrika Kumaratunga's government. We saw UNPs crossing over, accepting office. We saw under the other regimes. It's up to the judiciary to give a verdict on this matter. One can cross over accept office, but if one violates the party discipline and the party constitution, it is the Supreme Court that has to take a decision.
When you say that the judiciary has to take a decision, I recollect the statement that was issued by the former Chief Justice of Sri Lanka, stating prior to the elections that he supported Maithripala Sirisena, and 7 months after you have him supporting Mahinda Rajapaksa in the parliamentary election. So I'm not going to really talk about how decisions have to be taken in light of judicial proceedings and so on and so forth. I open the floor for questions from our journalists. Yes, Sonali.
Mr. Gunawardena, a constant criticism that is levelled against the Sri Lankan Parliament is that there is very little policy discussed, that there is always bickering that goes on. Incidentally, and I don't want to draw any parallels, but March 2017 saw your suspension for a week from Parliament. Don't you think that as a veteran politician, someone who has been in politics for decades, that you have a greater role to play in taking this country forward, especially given your role in the opposition?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I have a role to play, I hope, and I am trying to play the role as the leader of the joint opposition, a responsible role where we have not opposed everything that the government brings. So many bills we have supported, so much of financial allocations that are needed we have approved without any division. But there are some issues key issues on which we have to take a stand, and one issue was recognition of our 52 members as a joint opposition and giving due recognition, which is given by the speaker, and the previous speaker gave. Previous speakers have given this due recognition, which was not given to us. So anyone would understand that a leader should stand up and argue this matter when the speaker gives a ruling which is not acceptable.
Mr. Gunawardena, I want to ask you a question on the same lines as Sonali. When it comes to the joint opposition, let's leave aside the party politics for a bit and concentrate on the issues of the public. There is a racial issue happening in our country. The previous government was completely blind towards what was happening, was the allegation that was raised by this government. This government too are trying to do things, they are not trying to do things, we don't know what is happening, there is no clear vision as to that. The joint opposition can do something about this. If someone points a finger at you and says the joint opposition has not done anything about solving issues like the racial problem, even take the dengue mosquito problem that is happening, even to that extent, if someone points a finger at you and say, what is your answer to that?
On the dengue issue, we have been raising the issues from the very start. The government have been denying and not accepting the figures. They go at the doctors and say doctors are not responsible for doing their duties, and they are only criticizing the government. So the government seems to be not accepting what the opposition raises, even on nationally important issues. Same thing with garbage. We raise the issue, they just go on the defense. This is what has happened, as Sonali mentioned, in our parliament. This is what has happened. One is throwing only mud at each one. Nothing, perhaps something serious must take place. I was minister of the UDA when the decision was given to stop any more dumping of waste behind Sugatadasa Stadium.
Madampitiya,
that was the mountain. Then Kolanava came. Kolanava also was limited, but no one has taken seriously this issue. There was the alternative that was proposed.
Whose fault is it that the joint opposition is not taken seriously in Parliament, Mr. Gunawardena? Isn't it the fault of the leadership of the joint opposition and the members themselves? Because you were talking about the lack of enthusiasm of parliamentarians to attend parliamentary proceedings. From what we saw in the recent past was a lot of shouting, a lot of uneasiness within the parliament premises, some of which led to, as Sonali said, your suspension also. You say that there is a problem, understood, but this is what is seen. So who is not taking the joint opposition seriously, and whose fault is it?
Joint opposition has supported the government in on some key issues which faces the country, as you asked. Take the constitution. Okay, we do not agree, but when the Constituent Assembly was to be formed, we did move some amendments that the Parliament should have the full responsibility, and that's how the Constituent Assembly resolution was moved. We could have opposed it at that time, but we were ready to consider certain aspects. But what has happened? 6 committees was appointed, JO members' proposals were totally ignored, and reports were submitted. And we had our members said, okay, if our views are not accepted, we will announce that we have nothing to do with these 6 reports. But I still remain with Honorable Prasanna Ranatunga in the steering committee amidst difficult times where the government does not want to listen to the JO's proposals. I mean, we are not aliens. We are in the democratic process having a mandate from the people. If you take up the recent issues of the attacks on the Muslim, some of the shops and religious places, we have openly condemned it. We said we have nothing to do with this. And the government, of course, say there has to be new legislation, so many things. For everything they say new legislation. The legislation today and the policy is enough to act. I mean, surely they have enough information of what is going on. Or if it is wrong, police could say it's wrong, whether it's a minister's utterance or the government spokesman's utterance. If it's wrong, to say wrong. We have to protect our people, whether Sinhala, Muslim or Tamil.
When we talk about the Parliament as a whole, what is the role of the opposition leader, Honorable R. Sambandhan, and the relationship between the joint opposition? Are you all completely different viewed, or what's happening there? What is the relationship like?
Leader of the opposition doesn't summon us for any discussion. Sad. But we speak to him. We speak to him, he speaks to us.
So does he take you seriously is my question.
I don't know. That is, I mean, it's up to him to show his seriousness by accepting and giving room for recognition of the major group. I mean, if he wants to hold to the leader of the oppositionship, that is another issue. But take India, Lok Sabha. Lok Sabha doesn't have a leader of the opposition. Even Sonia Gandhi's party is not recognized as leader of the opposition because they do not have the numbers. In Lok Sabha, you have to have minimum 10% to be recognized as the leader. But all parties having certain number of members are recognized duly by the speaker and given due recognition. So there are so many formulas that could be followed, but all that has been rejected. We don't have a bad rapport with the leader of the opposition. We still speak to him. We have discussions trying to get time, and we tell him, please give us some more time. He has sometimes been very accommodative. Sometimes he's helpless.
Mr. Gunawardena, what if I bring up a point like this? What will your answer be? If I tell you that the government is not taking the joint opposition seriously because people who are in the joint opposition, except the leadership, have been involved in various malpractices. They have been summoned to the CID a couple of times, summoned to the FCID, Bribery Commission, Presidential Commission of Investigation. What if I raise that point up and say, this is why the government is not taking you seriously? What will your answer?
I don't think that is acceptable because the government would rather like some of our members to cross and be with them. That is the major issue. FCID, yes. FCID was set up under special gazette notification. How can one say FCID is a acceptable process of investigation? Because Sri Lanka has criminal law, civil law, special laws that Parliament has passed. This is not a law that Parliament has passed. How the process of FCID takes place is we are not against anyone being questioned by the correct law being put to the courts, ask him to defend himself. That's okay. That is the position we have taken, not by special laws to be vindictive on your opposition. Not only on the opposition, on public servants. You see, the public servants are today being dragged, and as a result they can't do their job. How can government expect delivery of public service in this manner? You know, this is it's spreading all over. Take floods. The government public servants are not taking decisions. Local authorities are under special officers. They are not taking decisions. Government has to move. Their top has to come down and say, do this. Formerly, it was the officers who carried on with the elected representatives. We can see the collapse. It is a sad situation where not only Parliament, even the general democratic institutions are collapsing.
Mr. Gunawardana, you say that public representatives with state officials take decisions at a time of a disaster, but I want to drag your attention again to what happened during the last 10 years in Sri Lanka, in particular after the former Minister of Economic Development, Basil Rajapaksa, came into play. One of the allegations by certain members of your 52JO joint opposition members is the fact that there was so much of interference made by the former president's family. Wasn't that the case?
Former president's family in what way? I mean, maybe Basil
Rajapaksa. Do you want me to be very more precise, Mr. Gunawardana?
No, you may, but what I'm trying to say is, of course, this criticism, in order to corner a government, you target the leaders and the leadership, and you go at this is a pattern that is seen, in most of the Asian countries.
Mr. Gunawardana,
this is the pattern that was followed here too.
Let me give you an example. Every ministry, every minister had to ask permission from the former president's brother to have individuals being put into ministries. I recollect a letter surfaced that was sent by former member of parliament, Namal Rajapaksa, to the Minister of Ports, stating that certain number of individuals be hired to the Ports Authority from the Hambantota district. You had individuals stating that the brother of Mahinda Rajapaksa was interfering into every ministry. We saw a ministry being created, the Ministry of Economic Development, which had certain amount of interference into most ministries in Sri Lanka. I can name a few if you want to. The Ministry of Tourism, for an example.
No, I don't think it could be.
It was not gazetted. We did not see something of this sort happening, where the Ministry of Finance had the Lotteries Board into the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But we saw something very, very similar, which was not documented, but under the firm grip, under the firm hold of the family of the previous regime. Example, where did we see the Urban Development Ministry or Authority being attached to the Ministry of Defense? Which government have we seen this? Have we seen this anywhere in the world? The answer is a simple no. But it happened during the previous regime. So this is not the first time something of this sort has taken place, isn't it? I'm not trying to, in any way, trying to say that what happened today is right. What I'm trying to say is what happened in the past is also wrong.
No, maybe the past is wrong in the sense people are given a mandate, don't do it again. That is why you go to the country and ask for a mandate. And those who have held office have been sent home into opposition or out of the political...
And that very opposition is raising their voices in parliament, starting and asking for more power. That is the 52 members.
No, I would tend to disagree in totality of how you put the question of saying the family ran everything. It is easy to say.
This is not what I am saying. This is what many members of parliament are saying.
No, but that is, of course, those who have crossed are saying so many things.
You had the former president saying a lot of things happened without me not even knowing, right after the 9th of January polls in 2015.
Yeah, obviously certain things were done by ministers, provincial councils, etc. In the development process. The president of the country doesn't know everything. He only knows the key projects. He was the finance minister. He would know only the key areas of the finance ministry. It's expected him to know every little bit. But the allocations have to be channeled through for economic development, certain targeted development areas of society like Samurda, the lowest earning categories, the farmers, Economic Affairs Ministry had to handle. So the generalization of that they were running everything was not what was happening.
Of course,
that happened when I mean, with respect, I would say, it all happened when my President Sirisena crossed over. Had he not crossed over, he would never have said, this is what happened. I mean,
no, this is not what the President said. This is what members of the government said at that time.
No, members of the government would say only because President Sirisena, General Secretary of the SLP, I was there with the very last dinner he had when he agreed with everything. But the next morning he was away. I mean, that is his decision, that's a different thing. But right through, he was General Secretary plus Minister, key Minister of the government. Even if we take the Saitam issue, he has openly said in Parliament, they are not recognized. This institution is not recognized. Now he is President. Why isn't he taking it over of solving the issue? If it was Mahinda Rajapaksa or the family obstructing, he has said, no, Saitam is not recognized, I am not recognized as Minister of Health. Now, the issue is before him, 7,000 students are on strike. Doctors are protesting not to have a half-baked doctor in Sri Lanka. I mean, isn't this a major issue for Sri Lanka's health service?
Why did the former regime say okay to the Saitam?
No, former regime has not said okay. That is a misconception. So former regime, the Minister of Higher Education, S.V. Disnayak, has issued a gazette which has to follow certain procedures. He has not followed the procedures but issued the gazette of recognizing degree awarding status. Now that is different to a doctor. Doctor gets registered after his exams with the Sri Lanka Medical Council. Minister has no powers in relation to that. Now, Minister S.P. Dissanayaka's gazette is valid only for 4 years. Now we are past 4 years. Minister Dissanayaka's gazette, an agreement says 51% overnight in 2 weeks should go to the state. What has happened? The institution has violated this. I don't want to go into this. So, Minister Dissanayaka's gazette had certain things to follow. Follow this, it has to be a teaching hospital. It has not been done.
A scholarship was given by President Mahinda Rajapaksa to one of the students as well to pursue her medical studies. I can give you the date.
All presidents have given scholarships and helped
so you
individual
say that this
students.
was one of the issues that President Mahinda Rajapaksa did not.
I know, coming from President Jayawardena's time, President Fund has been helping. Now that does not give recognition to Saitam. Just because you help a student to go to some chemical institute in London and qualify and come, that does not mean you're supporting that institution. Here the law says, even under President Rajapaksa, the law had to be followed, 4-year term. After 4 years, the license has to be renewed after an investigation. That is the law of the Higher Education Act. Perhaps most of the MPs do not read this. Honorable Prime Minister would know. I think he is the only one who would know this aspect of the law. Such issues are today causing serious crisis in the country. Why are we ignoring this? President Jayawardena, I know, when the North Colombo private medical school issue came, he said, no, I'm not going to take it over. But finally he said, let the students have their day, I take over. and that was the end of the story. And Kalaniya, it was amalgamated to Kalaniya. So I mean, governments must understand certain issues when it's raised by professionals. Okay, don't want to listen to students, listen to the professors or the medical faculties, listen to the medical profession who are going to run the medical service, not the political who are going to run the medical service or medical education.
Your government, which was in power, on many occasions used tear gas against medical students. Your government in power did not, however, use tear gas on GMOA. However, there were many strike actions that were launched during your government's era.
Very democratic strike action was always allowed by our government. We had not treated the students in the way present government has treated. From the day they came in front of the UGC ward place, you know, innocent female students were brutally attacked. The Human Rights Commission passed judgment on police officers. What has the government done? Nothing. Those police officers are in the open. I mean, they talk of justice. These commissions would bring normalcy to country, which Rajapaksa did not have. What have these commissions brought? Nothing in them. Nothing in them.
Where was democracy when several STF personnel went inside the prison complex in Borella, shot dead many individuals? Where was democracy then?
There has been inquiry on that, and action.
Never saw a report coming out during the Mahinda Rajapaksa government time.
Could be during Mahinda Rajapaksa or even other times, but there was an inquiry, and the relevant reports were sent for action to be taken. Action has to be taken by proper authorities, not by A, B or C. I mean, the law has...
President's brother was the Secretary of Defense at that time, and you expect justice to be meted out, Mr. Gunawardena?
Yeah, President brother or president's, whoever the party loyalists, there is a law in the land. It has to follow.
But never we saw members of the MEP or even the far left parties making an outcry on this.
That is what we have been accused of, but we have raised a lot of issues within government.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gunawardena. We need to go for a quick commercial break. But before that, very quickly, you said that you were quite surprised when former General Secretary of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, Maithripala Sirisena, crossed over after having dinner. Were you also surprised on the 9th January 2015 morning when Basil Rajapaksa left the island as well following the defeat of the presidential poll? Very quickly.
Not really. I mean, yes.
That was expected.
That was his private decision to go. No one can prevent any individual leaving the country.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gunawardena. I like your optimism and how you put things into perspective. We're going for a short commercial break. When we come back, it's Face the Nation.